Hey guys, we just want to thank you so much for coming back to the Doctor to Doctor podcast. And today we're going to have a hearty discussion with one of my favorite persons, somebody who has helped me to just navigate my time here coming to Atlanta in terms of community, building brand, and also career. I do believe this is an important conversation, especially for our physician, nurses, and anyone just coming to the US for residency or any other program. And so this one is for you. Remember to like, subscribe, and let us know what impacts you in the comment. But without further ado, I present to you Mr. Damon McLean.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. This is good, man. I'm excited about the conversation today.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for being here. I am honored. So, Damon, bro, I know you have a journey in terms of just coming to the States. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey?
Yeah, man. I think a lot of people, some people know originally from Trelawney, ended up going to high school, which like you'll hear out in Kingston. And then when I originally came to America, it was for school. So I came to college here. This was 2010, so a while back. As you can imagine, I wasn't thinking about staying in America. None of that was really top of mind. I just wanted to come to college here, have some fun, and potentially go back home. Actually, people know me like I grew up near a farm, so I've always had this like deep affinity for what might the farming system looks like in Jamaica and eating from the ground. As you guys know, it's been 15 years and I've been here bounced around different cities. I came in Jersey, was in New York for a bit, was in Phoenix,
Mm,
Arizona, was in San Francisco, back to Atlanta, and in Georgia now. So it's been a wide ranging across the states of dealing with everything from visas to job to just understanding what it's like to be. Um, I don't know what it's the entire term, but like being an immigrant coming here and settling down.
yeah, I can imagine. And I think a big part of that, which we want to get into, is just the community because you've now left something that is familiar and coming
Mhm.
into an environment that is completely new. And I think that's sometimes a shock to people in terms of cultural shock, being alone, finding identity, recreating your identity. How was that for you?
Yeah, and everything. I like to think about it where it's like there's always a push and a pull. So whether you left Jamaica or you're leaving a job or you're going to a new city, there's always something pushing you, but then there's always something pulling you, right? So something pushes you out of that season, and there's always something pulling you into the new season. Then, and depending on who you are, that's a great thing, right? Because
Yeah.
at every point, every inflection point, you get a chance to almost reimagine and reinvent yourself. And so if certain people saw you as one person in Jamaica, like if someone saw me as like I was the clone, the class clone in Jamaica, if I came to America, I could now be seen as something different. And it's a
Right,
new
right, right.
start. So depending on who you are, a new starts are interesting for people. It's like, yeah, I get a chance to start over. Now, if you're the person who does not like new starts and were forced to move or you're forced to go into this new season, um, that might be hard because a lot of people don't deal with change as well. And so I think for me, it's been an interesting journey of like, number one, given an opportunity, it's both to explore new versions of myself that I might not have been thinking about or that I've always wanted to be, but maybe I was trapped in a box by how people saw me. But then
Mm,
also, one of the things I'm continuously thinking about as I am progressing, I have to be careful about who am I becoming and
right.
on the journey, what am I losing? So the idea is that if you think about it, like San Francisco is on, the West Coast, probably the furthest and one of the furthest you can get from Jamaica. And so the idea is that like it's almost like as I move further from home, there are parts of me that no longer felt like me. And so community feels comes into that place because like how do you feel grounded and like how do you define home when it's not a physical location? And like what might it look like to create that for yourself and for the people around you? So these are all these thoughts that I was thinking about. I don't think I've have it all figured out, but it's definitely things that I think I've done well over the last couple of years, and happy to share a little bit more about like different ways that I've done that.
Yeah, I get you. I know when it is that I came to the States 2, 3 years ago, one of the biggest thing was actually just getting grounded. Because
Mhm.
as you said, you're now trying to find your just who you are in a new space.
Mhm.
You were one person, now you're coming here, now you have new people. And in regards to people who think differently, people who operate differently, people who move differently, and you're kind of just finding the lay of the land because people
Mhm.
respond differently. For example, just even like wording, because you know when you say, "Oh, hush," and people say, "Huh?"
Yeah.
They say, "Are you telling me to shut up?" No, no, no.
Yeah.
So it's been a very interesting road. And so one of the things I want to get into is just pinpointing the mindset in regards to the biggest cultural or professional shift that you probably had to adjust to when moving to the States.
Yeah, I think there are several. There are several, right? I think language is one thing, right? You talk about that. Like I remember when I first came and into it's like, hey, good morning. Like the idea of good morning and how are you doing is like so strange, right? For people here because how are you
True.
doing is just like you saying, hey, it's not actually slow down and saying, how are you doing? Um, So I think there was like language is one thing. As I've gotten older, food has become an interesting thing where I often joke of like where I grew up, everything was organic because the option of inorganic wasn't a thing. And so
Right.
you just eat from the land versus here, I'm like, wait, what's the difference between organic and inorganic? And like I thought everything was just, from the land. So food is an interesting thing that you navigate and you start to realize um the things you take for granted. Depending on where you are, weather is a big thing. Like I was in New Jersey and snow was just, I vowed to never go back to places where there's snow and live there. Um, but then there was some meta stuff, right? And when I say meta is as you start to work, you start to realize that there are some people like for me personally, there's a version of success that other people might have that's different from me. And so I
Mm,
remember working with people where it's like, hey, you might have started at a different place than I am. So how can I be comparing yourself to you? Another meta thing is in Jamaica, like, we are taught kids should be seen and not heard. And the way
yeah.
how we view authority there is slightly different, where there's a certain individualistic feel when you come to America, and there's like individualism where it's like you're pursuing something for yourself and your freedom of speech. You're almost like incentivized where I work to speak up and to challenge the authority. And in Jamaica, like
This is
I didn't necessarily have that vibe. So you're starting to
true.
realize like there is these different things. Um, so I think there's like just like a different expectation. So one would call it culture, but those are the different pockets of language, how we talk, the individualistic thing versus like you see a lot more kids leaving home and moving halfway across the country versus there's this deep seated thing that's tied in Jamaica where it's like you're tied to your family, and if you let your family down, it's a disgrace. So you're more communal. Um, and not to be outdone, like when you go to churches here, it's just completely different too. Like there's a lot of
Yeah.
churches that are completely different. Um, I will say one of the other things you start to wrap your head around is like obviously Jamaica is a pretty small place, and so there is a communal feel where it's like you know your neighbors. Um, and we were joking with someone the other day of like, the idea of like childcare here in America is like this big industry, whereas like yeah, there's daycare in Jamaica, but growing up, I don't ever recall ever going to a daycare. Like there was always someone in the community that would help. Um,
Yeah.
and so that the idea of families and communities and like when you went to church, like you would know a lot of people there versus when you go to churches here now and the mega churches, it's like, especially if you're in a city, there's so much of these people you don't know. And so I just think it's just like this unraveling of it's not good, it's not bad. I like to think about it. Now it's like a buffet items of things. And
Right.
the issue is
Right.
like now you have to go co-create the life that you want to live versus the life that you were given in Jamaica. So now it's like the world is your oyster in America, but you still have to go create it to make it fit what you
Yes.
want.
Yes, I agree. You have to be very selective, or my experience is that you have to be very selective about the communities that you choose, the people you choose, the institution that you choose to include in your daily life, because there are just
Mhm.
so many options.
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes you get decision fatigue as well. Okay, do I go here? Do I go here? Who do I spend my time with? And I think you have to be very intentional and know have like a blueprint or a map or a guide of what is it that I want to become, who am I becoming, and who do I think is the best person to facilitate, nurture that, as well as where will that be nurtured
Yeah.
best.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And you had mentioned the professional landscape, and I know that a lot of professionals do listening, but so I do want to get into how does a new person, new to the land, start building confidence in
Mhm.
the workplace, especially with the newness of it all.
Yeah, man. One of the things that I wish I could say that I've learned it, right. And not that it ever happens anywhere, but I was under the assumption that you come, you do great work, and you get promoted, and that's, it's just like you just if you produce great work, that's what it is.
Mm,
One of the things I'm slowly realizing is that how much you have to advocate for yourself. Um, And I think in Jamaica, there's a double-edged sword about pride and how you think of like people. You don't want to be too boastful, but not saying that in corporate you're being boastful here. But there's spaces where people want you to say what you're going through, say what you've accomplished. Like that's sometimes okay. Um, and so that's one of the first things I tell people that like like the version of like closed mouths don't get fed. Like you have to speak up because
right.
just because you did great job doesn't mean you're gonna get promoted. And so, unfortunately, office politics are a thing, and you cannot escape it. And learning to navigate that, I think that's it's going to be the big thing. So I think the first thing you have to do is obviously you have to be performing, right? Like you have to be without fault as much as possible. Like that's just baseline level. Are you showing up on time? Do you understand what's needed from the job? Now, now the intangibles become interesting because now it's like, how are you talking to different departments? Like, do people see you as capable? And that's one of the things I start to realize your image is important because Shaquille, I might see you as a nice person, or sorry, you might see yourself as a nice person. But if
Right.
you don't, then what is it worth? And so there's something about the perception that people have on you, and
Mm,
you have to be constantly figuring out like, how am I being seen? Because you don't want to get to the end of the year and you're supposed to get a bonus, and then it's like you didn't do A, B, and C, yada yada yada. And I think that's important of like image becomes so much important in the sense that not only you need to do the work because work builds confidence, like can you do it and build confidence. The other thing is so sorry, you build confidence, you then you're doing your image, and then the next thing I like to think about is like I call it your community of support or your personal board of advisor. And the reason is, man, stuff's gonna hit the fan. And I have at least one of these conversations each week with a group of people where it's like, am I crazy? So you come to them and says, hey, this thing happened at work. Like, is this normal? And they're like, nah, that's not normal, dude. Like, get up, you know.
right.
And I
Right.
think having someone that you can talk to, and even if it's not someone in your field, even if it's not, um, is so helpful because it opens up this world where it's like us Jamaicans, I think we're very resilient and we can work through things, but
Mm,
it helps you to normalize that you're not going crazy. And then also it also gives you an opportunity to see what else might be out there.
yeah.
Because as you're building your confidence, you can say, is this something that I should stay and endure? Is this just a normal part of assimilating, or this is a really toxic environment? So your community of support is very important, even so much more important depending on where you are in your career, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I do think that is important, especially getting the different perspectives. Because I do believe that we, as Jamaican, we do have this sense of just pushing through things. But
Hmm.
sometimes we do have to step back and say, is this really healthy for me?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
from that time where survival is not the healthiest thing.
Yeah. The other thing I'll add to that, because I had a conversation with someone recently about similar topic of we glorify the struggle in Jamaica a lot. And this is overgeneralization, but this idea of that like if it's not hard, it's not worth it. And oftentimes that's not the case, right? Like some if you've ever been what we call flow state, and you know the what way what the young people say, if you're in your bag, like you're in the zone, like that
Yeah.
feels easy. Like when you're in the zone, it feels easy. It might take a while to get there, but oftentimes, like when you see Usain Bolt and all these guys running, like it feels almost effortlessly. It's like you're in that flow state going. And so I think a lot of Jamaicans glorify the struggle. And then I see this a lot, not just Jamaicans, but early career underrepresented folks that I help to mentor is that they have this thing where it's a silent sufferer because asking for help is seen as a weakness. So when you don't know something, you're like, you assume that you're supposed to know it, which is like, how would you have known this? This is your first 3 months on the job. So you don't ask for help. And so it get to a point where eventually you realize that you're not doing the things you want to do, but like you should have speak up. It's like there's just it's something I've learned that you really have to speak up way more, and that no one's going to say, man, like, yo, this guy's asking way too much questions. Now, if you're 2 years into the job and these are things that you should know, that's different. But in the early days, it's better to challenge the assumption. And that's something I've learned of like, hey, help me to understand how we're seeing this. Here's how I see this based on my background, but is this the right way to be thinking about this? And that's helped me to unlock a lots of conversation because most of the disagreements that I've had at work really comes down to just cultural differences. And like you're saying, if you're saying hush, um, and they're thinking you're saying shut up versus like, oh, that was a rough time. It's like it's just cultural differences, you know?
Right. Yeah. I do get that. Um, One thing I do want to ask you, like, what are the steps to actually building this healthy support group? Because
Mhm.
it's easy to just say it after you've done it, but I do believe that there is some difficulty in getting there. But what
Yeah.
were some of the steps that you took to get your people?
Yeah, I think with anything to build trust, you need vulnerability. And you have to go first you have to go first. And it's scary.
Yeah.
It's scary as in even if you're trying to get a date, you have to ask someone out unless everyone's asking you out, but you have to ask someone out and you have to run the risk of being rejected. I think it's the same thing with reaching out to people, building friends. I think there's something about that that's scary because I've had scenarios where I've been trying to, catch up with someone for a year. Like I've been playing phone tag with people, but it's just like they call me, they call that. But it's like,
Mm,
so I mean, the first thing is proximity. That's the best. If you can have proximity, great. And what I mean by that is, you go to church, you see this person multiple times a week. That is the best. It's same thing with college or someone at work that you can kick it with. It's like multiple touch points over a period of time. That's the studies have shown that's how true friendships are built. Like you don't really build friendship by meeting once a year. Um, so say start there. Like actually, I've a weekly call with someone right now who he's building a startup and we were able to connect. How that came about when I was in San Francisco during the pandemic, we're playing football. We're both goalkeepers, and I didn't know what was gonna come. We were just playing, with Monday, Sunday, and then Tuesday we'd go practice. We play a game Saturday, yada yada yada, right?
yeah.
Turns out this guy's starting a startup. He's like, yo, I heard that you used to work at startup, help me out. Like that's been like a 5-year cycle now. And so
Mm,
you start with the proximity, start with the things that whether it's church, there's probably a run club, football, like something that you're probably meeting a couple times a week. Like could also be you go to the gym the same time. You know, every once in a while, you kind of have to make it, give a head nod. Don't just have your headphones in. So, because
yeah.
multiple touch points and just be like, just multiple touch points. However, if you don't have that, and that's a tricky piece, right? Like you have to start where you can have multiple touch points. Let's say you don't have that. Now, the wonderful thing about social media and being online is that you can still build that over a period of time. So what that might look like is I do this a lot. I'm mainly, in on LinkedIn with a lot of people. I've done this on Instagram as well. Even if you're liking the person or commenting, eventually you're like, yo, it would be cool to just kick it.
Mm,
No agenda, just seeing what's up. that might turn into, I have a couple just weekly calls and touching that's just like over the years, these are just people that like, whether it's group text or whatever that we continue. So that's how you keep it going virtual. So what I would say is like, wherever you're situated, and like find the intersection of something that you can do multiple times because friendships or communities built by multiple touch points. So church is just one of the best ones. Hopefully you're not going to too big of a church, but even if you do, you have small groups. That's one of the things. And then there's sports, there's the gym, there's walk clubs, there's I go to the same coffee shop so they know me there now. Like there's all these things of you're building consistency in your community and staying grounded. Now, if, as I said, and then the second piece, if you don't have that option and for some reason you're in Alaska and there's no one around, um, there's a virtual component to it that you can like almost leave these little like clues. Um,
Mm,
but let it not be mistaken like people are going to not show up to the call, people are going to drop the ball, people are like it takes
mhm.
putting yourself out there for a period of time. And then it's also like I have this for me, I don't necessarily need things from people per se, but it's like I'm a very like I'm intrigued to hear people's stories. So when I catch up with people like, hey, how are things? And that's just
Yeah,
it. Keep up the good job, keep on. And then that might spur into something eventually, but I don't know. It's not like I'm catching up with people to get something. It's just like, hey, you seem like cool, you enjoy this thing, let's kick it together, you know?
yeah, yeah. I think that's rich. 'Cause you're essentially going through all the points that I've had to maneuver. So I really do think that this will help someone in regards to just having structure in their approach. So thanks for
Mhm.
that. Something that you mentioned in regards to you being having experience in tech, working in San Francisco, having and then somebody coming to you, and that spurred the question of mentorship
Mhm.
because it's good to have peer to peer, but I do believe that sometimes you also need to see to relate to someone who is seeing 10 steps ahead, um, or 100 feet above. You get me? And so
Mhm.
what is your approach to mentorship and also finding that right mentorship or discipleship or just that guidance?
Yeah. So obviously I used to do a lot more now. I'm about to be 35, and so the idea of mentorship was way more important for me in my like 10 years ago. But the idea of guidance is interesting. So, and this is where I think social media and online has become really well, right? Depending on the field that you're in, it might be really easy to see this person is 10 years ahead of me. And that's very easy to say, hey, this doctor owns his own practice, or this person owns this medical spa, and I'm interested in owning medical spa. Are you, reaching out, hey, do you mind if we just kick it and you can help me to think through like where I'm at today? There are
Yeah.
2 points specifically I remember like going down that route. Number one, when I was leaving college and trying to train professionally, I was talking to people who were in their professional career and was like essentially saying, number one, is this worth it? Um, Number two, what are some steps I could take? So I remember that specifically. I've never been afraid of what we call cold outreach. And that's something I think a lot of people are afraid of or don't even know that it happens. It's just like find
Hmm.
someone on LinkedIn, find someone on Instagram, and just like, yo, I see that you're doing A, B, and C. Would love to chat. Or it's in the church, or like, that type of stuff. I don't think there's any shortage of it. It comes back to putting yourself out there. The good thing about it, there's a lot of like, um, I read a lot books. There's a lot of interviews of like, are there people that you admire that like I've gotten to the steps that you want, that you can then go read on their story, like because they might just be virtual mentors and guides that so because when you're trying to understand, a lot of people is like, am I on the right path?
Yeah.
You need these other people to help you to say yes, no, maybe so, yada yada yada. um and so I think it's like, as you're thinking through that, I think it's the same thing. Go back to your community and reach out to the people ahead of you. Now, where I'm at today, I'm if I'm thinking, 3 to 5 years down the line, I I think eventually your what, and I think what I ran into, was I felt like my journey was unique in a lot of ways. And
Hmm.
so the problem people have is that like they go to someone and if someone's in your footstep they were 20 years ago, man, the game has changed, bro. Like
Hmm.
so the advice that the 20-year-old person might tell you might not be as relevant because the way they might gotten into like what being a medical professional looks like 20 years ago is not what it looks like today. Like they didn't have to deal with AI and they're about to be retired and like they're like, I don't know, bro.
I get you. I get you. I get you.
So I think there's a big thing of like there's some general stuff like people look at me as like, oh, you'd be good. Like, and I hate that type of mentorship.
Mm.
Uh, but it's like having something technical when you're in the moment. Because candidly, what they don't tell, like even I mentor people, is that very few people very few people remember what they were actually going through at that time, like the anxiety they had, the decision they have. Like think about maybe 2 years ago, like the things that you were stressing about, you're not stressing about anymore. You've forgotten how that felt. And so I
Right.
think a lot of times when we try to mentor people or go seek mentorship, we forget that like they don't remember because they're so far removed from the scenario. They don't remember the
Mhm.
specific how hard it is for you in that state. So I do think like there are people that can help you and like be a voice of reason that are above you can say, hey, do this, do that. But if you can't find someone direct, there's tons of stuff online where you can almost start to like co-create your own like virtual mentor, which I think a lot of people are starting to do.
Yes, and that just brings me to say, I do believe that I know you're working on a project, building a project, or have started one that's growing, Soul Sessions, such a powerful group where you actually bring people together that can share their experiences. And these are people from different professions, different dimensions, different cultures. So I do believe that is also very special. And thank you for doing that, 'cause that has definitely also impacted me. And then we'll definitely share with you guys in regards to sharing it in the link. So make sure you check out Soul Sessions.
Yeah.
But I do have just two more questions.
Hmm.
Um, in regards to just because you are in tech sales, yes?
Hmm.
And so how we have now spoken about building a community, but no, I want to make it a little bit more personal. How do you go about building a brand you in the workplace?
Yeah. Um, so it goes back to I shared a version of it in throughout this thing. There's this guy that wrote this book a long time ago, and he has this her name Pi Pie, right? And it's so the idea is like performance. It's you have to perform. It's your image, and it's kind of like your presence of sorts, right? And so he's saying like in order for I think it was 80s or 90s, like in order to get ahead um in the work, you have to perform. Then there's like, how do people view you? So it's like back then, like obviously you're fully dressed, yada yada. And then he talks about just like just showing up. Um,
Yeah.
just you just continually showing up. How are people uh like what's your executive presence and all of that? And what he said is like how to truly get ahead is less about like people think is performance mostly, but that's like one of the smallest subset of everything.
Mm,
I take that as a thing where it's like, for me, the number one thing is to build your career is like you have to perform, right? Like I think there was a version where for me, I think part of it coming from Jamaica and doing sports is like I wanted to be the best. So anything I would have gotten into is like I wanted to be the best manager, I wanted to be the best sales rep, and that was kind of hard for me because it's not like track or Olympics where it's like who is the top jumper and like it's in a lot of industries arbitrary. Like if I was to ask you like who's the best medical profession in your field, like it's kind of like it's arbitrary. It's not very black and white. Um,
yeah.
and so for me, it's always like if someone was to ask me how did you perform in the last 5 years, they could point and said, okay, this was a very high performing person. Now,
Hmm.
the way I flipped it in the last 5 years is then you have to then decide what is it that you want to be known for.
Right.
Um, and when you start to think about that, like now you can start to work towards that. Because I've done this with my multiple teams where I'm like, hey, what are 3 words you would describe me as? Like those type of things, because I'm trying to get like what is the image that they have of me? Because if
Hmm.
I view myself as a coach and someone who is like deeply empathetic, and I wanted to be like the empathetic leader, I have to make sure like I'm working towards that. So I think it comes down to like how to build a personal brand is like you have to perform in whatever job you're doing. But then the
Mm,
next thing is like if I was to ask the folks that like you've interacted with, like how would you describe you? You want to make sure how they describe you matches up to the way that you want to be seen. And if there's a disconnect, you have to work on that. So I think a lot of people don't sit down and like I ask a lot of the folks I work with, like, what would you want to be known for? Like if someone
mm,
is walking in past and I was like, hey, have you heard about this person? Because once you start to describe what you want to be known for, then it's almost like your values that you can say the projects you take on will either align with what you want to be known for or misalign. And I think that sometimes we don't sit down and think like, you know what, like these are three things that like I would love for people to say. And you can even this is morbid, but like I'll go write a 90-year-old a letter to your 90-year-old self and say like, what would you want to be known for? Like, what type of person do you want to be known for in this season? Because it helps you to kind of be a guiding light of like if you have these things you want to be known for, then it's really easy to start to see like, all right, I'm gonna go take on this project because it helps me to continue this brand that I have. So once you start to do that, it starts to show out. So my post aligns with that. Like everything that I do comes from that place versus just me trying to be a jack of all trades, you know?
yeah, I think there's power in having a focused mind and hyper focusing on. So always asking a question, who am I becoming? What am I doing here? What do I want to be seen or known for? I think that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, just rich gems, man. I appreciate that, bro. But like just tying it all together, if it is that you could give one piece of advice to that professional listening in saying, hey, I am now heading to the States. I'm a bit scared for building my new person, my new brand, my new community, and just starting all over again, what would that advice be?
Yeah, it would really sum up everything that we've said. Number one, um, there's this term we call the liminal space. Um, there's actually like parts of it is very biblical, like in the Garden of Eden. It's like you can't go back. Like there's no going back, and then the future is uncertain. So you're in this like weird cocoon of space. Some people might call it the Twilight Zone. You're in this weird space. And I think it's an amazing opportunity to become more of what you are in that space. So I think number one is like you have to name the season. Um, so name the season. Number two, I often think about as you're going through this moments of transition, this liminal moment is like, what are one to two things you can do for you? Because what will happen is you will feel like a fish out of water. You will feel like nothing's your own. Like driving different side of the road, the food is different. Like everything, depending on who you are, sometimes like the water might not mesh with your hair, right? Like, and so like, is there one to two things that you can do that's you? And then I think number three, as you're starting to think about like this transition, is we've been talking about community and we never want to. It's okay to be homesick. I think everyone goes through it at a certain point in time. Um, I think there's an opportunity to, unfortunately, you have to do it. Some people are fortunate enough to come here and have family. Some people are fortunate here to come here and friends. Um, I do think there is this like I hate to say this because it might sound weird. Like you might be able to find friends here in the sense of they're like non-Jamaican friends. That's possible. But there's something about having a group of people that can relate to what you're going through.
Mm,
There's nothing quite like that when someone can say, wow, like you're going through it. I went through that 2 years ago. Let me tell you. Like, so what we're doing is normalizing the feeling of what you're going through. Um, and if you have to go out of your way to do that, I would say do it as much as possible because it helps to keep you grounded. It helps to just give you just a sliver of remembrance of home, you know.
yeah, that's powerful, man. Well, thank you so much, Daman. I really do appreciate this talk. I think that this will help people to just have a blueprint to finding community, finding themselves, and building brand you. Um, Bro, keep doing the good work that you're doing.
Appreciate you, man. I checking out some of the YouTube clips. So I think there's some good stuff going on, folks. I think what you're doing is really cool. And these, I think it's hopefully, for me, it's that relatability. So when people see whatever you're doing, what I'm doing, it's this relatability of like, we're not superhuman. We're human just like you. We've gone through it. And all we're just saying, we're not even experts. We're just saying, I was in your shoes 2 years ago. I was in your shoes 10 years ago. And I'm just sharing you stuff that have helped us. Like it might help you, might not, but just a perspective is always helpful.
Perspective is always helpful. I do agree, man. Thank you so much again, Naman, for just being on the podcast and hope to have more conversations like this as we help person just navigate that professional as well as personal bridge and also just that crossover as well in the middle. So
Yeah.
thank you, and I'll see you on the next episode, bro.
All right, bro. Appreciate
All
it.
right.